Hello everyone, this is Dr. Jeku from marriagecrisis.com with the web address www.marriagecrisis.com. And first I wanted to bring your attention to the page about me, where you can see a photo of myself and read some background information. Today's tutorial is about divorce, and it is based on my book, Defining the New Testament Logia on Divorce and Remarriage in a Pluralistic Context. Something interesting about the book, it is in Vatican's library, and it is my doctorate which I finished in the University of Ljubljana, Slovenia, the Catholic Faculty of Theology. The conclusions I reached in the book do not agree with the Catholic view on divorce and remarriage, and yet I was awarded the highest grade and distinction, summa cum laude, for my doctorate. So these are interesting facts which may trigger your curiosity, and you may decide to consider the book. And if you would like to purchase it, you can use this website or Amazon. Let's go to the tutorial, Mapping Divorce. I'm using Mind Manager to establish the concepts and their links. And we start with a definition of marriage. Marriage is considered related to establishing both personal and social models of relationship. On personal level, marriage is a relational model, a framework for companionship, support, and raising children. On social level, marriage is an institution, social model for supportive relationships. Further, my definition of marriage extends to the biblical understanding of the concept, and here I offer understanding of the Old Testament view of marriage as covenant relationship. And we have the beautiful picture of the relationship between God and Israel. Then New Testament view of marriage as covenant, and the beautiful picture of the relationship between Christ and the church. My definition of marriage extends to the interpretation of the Bible by all main Christian traditions. They all agree in understanding marriage as covenant, permanent, lifelong nature of marriage as intended by God. And they disagree in regards to how this is applied in human life. And here we have the conditioning of marriage by application. Marriage is covenant. And marriage as such exists in society and faces social challenges. Marriage is an institution, and in the society, the social challenges undermine this understanding of marriage and try to deinstitutionalize marriage. What are the challenges? We have consumerism. Consumerism is about quality and value satisfaction. If one of the spouses is not satisfied with the other, he or she is looking for alternative, a new spouse. We have separation or easy divorce and remarriage and the phenomenon of serial monogamy. And here, once again, lack of satisfaction leading to divorce and remarriage. Search for a new partner. Cohabitation. Here we have the lack of the legal supportive framework of marriage for spouses and children. Contraceptives. Yes, their positive role in marriage in regards to planning for children, and their negative role outside of marriage for exploration of sexual desires. We have abortion and illegitimacy, and here we have the lack of the supportive framework of marriage for children. Then we have sexual revolution, started long time ago. We have further and further development of that revolution in regards to exploration of sexual desires outside of marriage. Finally, we have homosexuality, and here it undermines the marriage as a union of opposite gender and procreation. Further, we have domestic challenges of marriage covenant. And here we need to focus on physical abuse, violence against the spouse, emotional abuse, using emotional means against the spouse, sexual abuse, nonverbal, verbal, physical, and other against the spouse, economic abuse, material mistreatment of the spouse, and finally, spiritual abuse, misuse of religion and spirituality against the spouse. Marital crisis. we need to once again understand marriage covenant as a lifelong institution. And here it's important to consider that it is established in the creation account, and it is in a way certified as covenant there. We have the beautiful language in the Genesis 2:21 to 24, where we see the diversity of genders coming in one unity of one flesh. And we see the living and cleaving language, which is a covenant language. This creation account of marriage, it becomes very important for Jesus' teaching. Next one, we have the covenant stipulations. And here we have the law of the slave wife in Exodus 21:10 to 11. And this law obliges the man to provide food, clothes, and conjugal rights to the slave wife in spite of the appearance of the second wife. If this provision is not established, the slave wife is free from the marriage and from the slavery. So we see the violation of the marriage covenant here, of the covenant stipulations, and legitimacy of divorce. We see this also in the New Testament, in Ephesians 5:25 to 33, a very important passage for all Christian traditions in regards to marriage. And here we have the concept of care based on an example of how man loves his own body and takes care by feeding it and clothing it. We have the emphasis on love in the covenant relationship, and also the example of that relationship in Christ and the church. Next part of the marriage crisis, very important, reconciliation. How to deal with the marriage crisis through reconciliation. We go to 1 Corinthians 7:11, and we see how Paul uses the teaching of Jesus about the permanency of marriage, interpreting it in his own context, where we have an inadequate attitude towards marriage covenant shaped by culture and society. The goal is reconciliation. Finally, we have the breakdown, violation of the covenant stipulations of marriage. And here, once again, we consider the Old Testament. We see how Yahweh, God, divorces Israel due to violations of the covenant, Hosea 2:2. And also, God provides the divorcee, Israel, with certificate of divorce. And then we see the remarriage. Yahweh marries Israel and Judah. A new bride, the united nation of Israel and Judah. And in the New Testament, we see Jesus' teaching, which emphasizes permanency in Mark 10:2 to 12 and Luke 16:18, and how Jesus deals with the Pharisees who object that using Deuteronomy 24:1 to 4. Jesus interprets the law here by using the creation account and establishes the covenantal nature of marriage as the tool for interpretation of the law here. And now we have this teaching of Jesus emphasizing the permanency of marriage, contextualized through the interpretation of Matthew in his own context towards his own audience with predominantly Jewish character. And Matthew introduces the exception clause of sexual misconduct. This clause establishes the legitimate grounds for divorce and subsequent remarriage. We also see Paul, how he interprets Jesus' teaching on the permanency of marriage in his own context, allowing divorce by the exception of desertion. Here we have the context of mixed marriages between Christian and non-Christian spouses, and when the non-Christian spouse decides to leave the marriage, the Christian spouse legitimately can divorce and legitimately can remarry. So let's consider what are the Christian views on divorce and remarriage? First of all, we have them as illegitimate actions, both of them. And here we have the Catholic view, which defines marriage as indissoluble, and both divorce and remarriage as illegitimate. Next view is about only divorce is acceptable, but all remarriage is wrong. Some Protestant scholars understand marriage as covenant kinship union, and therefore remarriage is excluded. Only divorce is allowed. Next view is about both divorce and remarriage are allowed, but both are wrong. And once again, we have the conflict here between God intended design of marriage and human application. Next view is about allowing divorce and remarriage on the basis only of Matthew's exception and Pauline privilege. And here, only these two grounds provide legitimacy of divorce and remarriage for sexual misconduct and desertion. On particular grounds, here we have the Orthodox Church view, where marriage is understood as lifelong sacramental institution, but because of the sinful human nature, some provision is to be made for divorce and remarriage on some particular grounds, such as adultery, permanent insanity, desertion, forcing the spouse into prostitution, endangering the life of the spouse. And finally, divorce and remarriage are legitimate on the grounds of violation of the covenant stipulations. And here, as previously explained, we have this violation of the covenant stipulations, which brings the marriage to a breakdown, in which case we have divorce and subsequent remarriage legitimate for the innocent party. And you can read more about this in my book. And with this, I am finishing the tutorial today on mapping divorce. And I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again for the next tutorial. Bye bye.